Well, there we go. It's good evening from Radio FM88 Australia, broadcasting from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. My name's Jeffrey Shaw, and I'm just the co-host to my partner in this wonderful world of dreaming the new dream, who's currently at the top of the totem pole, all the way from the UK. And she's brought in an interesting guest, and we've been talking off air, and I'm relishing the subject that we're going to be talking today. And it's a good morning to both you, and particularly to you, Andrena.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to anyone who's listening to Dream in the New Dream live or to the replay. And today it's my honour and privilege to have Eli, the Everyman. Now, I met Eli in Glastonbury about 3 weeks ago, I think. My sister introduced me to him, and we met up for a cuppa or what have you in the Crown, right in the heart of Glastonbury, and we exchanged information about different speakers that we've met and worked with and recommended. And so without further ado, Eli, welcome to Dream in the New Dream, and thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks very much, Jeff and Andrena. I really appreciate your time and inviting me onto the show. It's lovely to be with you both today, and really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, well, it could go anywhere today, as we've already been talking. So first of all, how did we get the name Eli the Everyman?
Okay, all right. Well, this is an interesting story. I grew up on stage, and which is kind of interesting because my grandma was very musical, my granddad was very musical, and my father was very musical. And I went to a ballet, tap, and modern school when I was, I think, 6 years old,
Right.
called Mrs. Hapgood's in Southsea in Portsmouth, where I come from. And I've always had a love of storytelling, and I grew up, very much going to the theatre a lot and being in the theatre. And my first degree is actually in drama, theatre, and television from King Alfred's College in Winchester. So Eli the Everyman, that's a long story, but Eli the Everyman is a play that was supposedly written in medieval times, 1400s, and it's just a very basic. It's an analogy of a person, just a human being, who goes on a walk through the woods, and he's confronted by the 7 deadly sins. So it's a morality play,
Right.
and it's actually overcoming all those different temptations that we have as a human being on the planet. So that's the real core of why I call myself Eli the Everyman, because I'm just representing everybody in what I do. And when I first did the Shine seminars, which we'll probably talk about a bit in a minute, the first one I did, I just said, I am everyone. I am not a leader. I am not I'm a spokesperson for everyone here in the room, and I represent everyone. And I went and sat down in the audience, and there was no one on stage, and everybody was looking at me. And I said, I just want you to know that we're all together, and we are all Everyman. So that's kind of why I've called myself Eli the Everyman. The reason why I've called myself Eli the Everyman, as opposed to my second name, is I've got a very convoluted second name, and people get it wrong all the time. They spell it wrong. They're like, "What?" And it's just call me Eli. Everybody just calls me Eli. And I just thought it would be really lovely to have what I would call a 5D avatar. So instead of having being kind of, I'm not saying chained to my second name, but having all those connotations, those family epigenetic relationships with my name and where it's come from, as we're moving into this new beautiful world, I thought it'd be really lovely to just shed that and just call myself Eli the Everyman. So it is my avatar name. So it represents a different version of me. So that's why I call myself Eli the Everyman.
Right.
And it's a lovely story because it when people ask me, I tell them that about the morality play, and I tell them about the 5D avatar, and it kind of works. So there we go. That's what it's about.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll get on talk about the Shine seminars in a bit, but I know you've done lots of seminars. So how did you start on this pathway? What was the opening that led you to be doing all of this work now?
Well, it's interesting because when I was 19, I'll go back to when I was 19. I went to live with the Hare Krishnas in Bhagavad Gita Manor, and which was the house that George Harrison bought the Krishnas in Buckinghamshire. And all my friends thought I was going to be a Krishna. I was really into it, and we made a documentary there. And I ended up, going to uni. But I kind of had in my teens up until say 21, 22 years of age, I did have this kind of spiritual force inside me that was coming through, but I didn't accept it, and I didn't really acknowledge it. I didn't pay attention to it. I was young, and I was at the poll tax riots in 1990, and I saw the system for what it was, and I saw that it was a nefarious system. And it's a long story, but basically the way that the media portrayed that particular event the next day after all the rioting, I just thought they're not for the people at all. The media are not for the people, the government are not for the people. So in 1990 I kind of knew that there was a spiritual side to life, but there was also this kind of nefarious kind of system that we all live in. And I went through all through the 90s pretty much just living a kind of normal-ish life. And then in 1997, I bought a book from a car boot called All Jews Must Live, written by a guy called Samuel Roth. And it's a really interesting book. It's a book about how Jewish people treat Jewish people. And I got some insights into that. And then I kind of went on this 13-year research kind of frenzy where I wanted to know, there was fundamental questions that I wanted to know. And the most fundamental question I wanted to know is, who are we as human beings? Where have we come from? What are we? And, I'm sure lots of people have thought that, loads of people, and probably everybody, but it's like, why? Why do we not know where we come from, and why do we not know who we are? And I went on this huge research, and my wife will tell you I had reams and reams and reams, a whole room full of stuff, and I just learned about Sumerian history, and I got into ufology. And I was never a classic conspiracy theorist, I would say, because I was never into JFK, I was never into the moon landings, I was never into 9/11. I was more into hidden occulted knowledge. That was where my passion was. And then I just gave it all up in 2010. I had my son, and I just thought I want to go back to just my normal life. So in 2020, when the COVID started, I knew that it was going to happen anyway. I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I got really activated, and I just thought we need to build community. The first thing I thought is there's going to be loads of isolated people out there, and it's for us to find our, I don't like to use the word tribe, but to find our tribe, to find our soul families, to find the people who are on the same wavelength. So I did the first Shine seminars in September 2021, and it was to build spiritual community, and get like-minded people to come along, and just spend a day together and just talk about things that we wanted to talk about, and not talk about any of the nonsense that was coming out of the media or the government. So it was a day for us to just celebrate being people and just celebrate all the good things in life. So that's a potted history.
And where was the first one? Because I picked up your flyer up in one of the shops yesterday when we were out, and this one's like West Beyond Severn. And this is a 3-day. So when you did your first one, where was that held? Because that's up your way, isn't it? Sort of.
Yeah, well, I live in Bristol, but this is really interesting story. So I got the idea of the Shine seminars came out of somebody else's event, and they said, "Why don't you do one, Eli?" And I went, "Yeah, okay, I'll do one." And I came up with the name, the Shine Seminars, because I wanted it to be informative. And it's that the idea came out in May 2021. We were in the middle of lockdown, and it took me until September to actually get it up and running. Nobody was putting anything on. The whole place was locked down. And even 10 days before the first event, I got let down by a guy who was going to supply a marquee for me. And I was just like, what? I've got all these speakers coming. I hadn't sold any tickets at that point, 10 days before. And I just had to put my hand in my pocket, and I hired a very, very expensive venue. And we sold 55 tickets in 10 days. And it was the day after lockdown. Literally, that Saturday was the day after lockdown's finished.
Wow.
And that was in Bristol. And I think we've done 12 since then. And we do a one-day event with 5 speakers. We concentrate on sovereignty, self-empowerment, the divinity within. We concentrate on wellness, nutrition, health, and then we do spiritual practice. So we do meditation, sound baths, and mindfulness. So they're the 3 things we do: sovereignty, well-being, and spiritual practice. And that's been our formula, to offer those 3 things on every single event. And we do one-off group gathering meditations, which we do. The last one we did on the tour on the 22nd last week, which was incredibly powerful. And we've done a couple in Oliver's Castle over in Roundway Hill in Devizes, which is where the crop circles are. So and I do put other people on as well. I promote other people because I feel that, kind of from my drama background, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a beautiful story, and it's partly what you guys are doing, sharing people's stories. And I say at the end of every single Shine seminars, I say to everybody, go away, hire a hall, get a crowd of people, get some people talking about their stories, and let's share this information and this knowledge and wisdom. So that's the basis of the Shine seminars, and it's been really successful. And it's kind of, people know me now as being Eli from the Shine seminars. Oh, there's Eli from the Shine seminars. So it's a lovely thing. And this 3-day event we're doing is just totally new for me.
Yeah, because we were reading through it early or yesterday, the different names, and I know that we've been privileged to have some of your guests that have been guests on our show. So I see you're doing camping there and everything. So how much is a 3-day ticket for the whole event?
Well, I've had to hire the festival site, and it's it's a lot of money. It's not cheap at all. But we have got a bargain as well. If we had to individually go out and get all the different structures, it would be tens of thousands of pounds. So what we've done is you can go for a single day, which is £65 for a single day, or you can go for the weekend, which is £150. So we've given a discount of £45 if you come for the 3 days. You can camp, or you don't have to camp, and if you camp, it's £12.50 a night, including breakfast. And you can stay the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And we've got this absolutely amazing chef called Faith, who is preparing the most beautiful, organic, locally sourced food. And it's £18 a day for the food, which I think that's a reasonable price for the quality of food you're getting. Faith is a conscious cook, so she cooks consciously, and the food will be incredibly good. I made it a priority that the food was going to be a highlight of the event. So I want people to go away going, wasn't that food amazing? Because we want to move out of this scarcity programming and move into abundance. And at the Shine seminars, I always, as a gift to my attendees, I always buy nuts and mulberries. We give free water, we give fruit. So we kind of make this cornucopia of just nutritious, good, wholesome, natural foods, and people love that. A lot of gigs you go to, and it's like you don't even get a digestive. And they come to my gigs, and there's just like loads of stuff everywhere, and that's my gift. I spend a couple of £100 every event, just saying, look, have some food. So the food at this event is going to be, top notch. I think compared to other things, because we're doing a conscious event, I think overall, if you wanted to do the whole thing, it's about £240, which seems like a lot of money. But if you break it down, it's £80 a day. And I say this without ego, but that lineup is the best lineup of any event in the country this summer. Yeah, 100%. So they're coming from all around the country, and I'm very, very grateful for everyone to speak. I mean, Laura's coming over from America. She's only doing 2 gigs in the UK this summer. And she agreed to come along, and that's an amazing thing for Laura to be with us. And she's going to be doing readings. She's going to be doing some readings for us. We're going to have some conversations with her as well as her own talk. She's going to be doing Global Alchemy. I'd like her to talk about galactic history as well, to be fair. And I'm not sure whether we'll be able to do that or not, but we're definitely going to have some talks with Laura. We've got 2 of the most beautiful plant consciousness people. We've got Juliet Bryant, who is known as the Mushroom Lady. And she's a superfood guru. She does Juliet's Kitchen. And we've got Emma Farrell as well, who wrote an incredible book called Plant Consciousness. And she's absolutely amazing lady. And she does fantastic ceremonies, and she brings in different consciousnesses of different plants. She's got encyclopedic knowledge. So Juliet and Emma alone are absolute stars. And then we've obviously got Maria Wheatley, who 2nd generation dowser, and her father was a dowser who was around all the very famous dowsers who kind of brought that energy forward with the ley lines and the dragon lines. And she's going to come along and talk. We've got Tim Chalice, who does kirtan chanting.
I've done a lot of kirtan with Tim over the years.
Yeah, he's an absolutely beautiful guy. And, again, I mean, I was amazed because everybody said yes pretty much straight away. Tim's so busy. He said yes, but he was very like, I don't know whether I can do it. We've obviously got Rory, who who's going to talk about the prophecies. We've got Michael Feely, who's going to give us some great insights into his talk's called The Real Da Vinci Code, which is exciting in itself. We've got a whole load of other speakers. I mean, those headline speakers there, the 12 there, the speakers that we couldn't put on that flyer, and we're going to do another flyer with another 12. We've got 45 speakers.
Yeah, no, I saw that.
Yeah.
So how long are they all talk? How long have you got more talking for?
Well, because it's a different event, our normal event, we've got 3 main tents, and 2 of the tents hold like 100, 150 people, and 1 holds 40. And the format is basically 3 speakers in the morning for an hour each, and then 2 speakers in the afternoon for an hour and a half each. But the 2 main tents are running in parallel, which is difficult because normally we just have 1 stage and 1 audience, and we focus the attention on that. This is slightly different. We're offering a basket of goodies, so people will come along and they go, oh, I want to see that, I want to see that, I want to hear those people. One of the tents is more presentation based, and the other one is more embodiment. So there'll be sound baths and the chanting, and there'll be voice workshops. obviously we've got Chloe Goodchild coming.
Yeah, I've done workshops with her. A
Yeah,
long time ago now. Yeah.
It's interesting because some of the speakers, they see this event as they're coming together, and that's a lovely thing for me, because a lot of these people have known each other for years, way before I popped up on the scene, so to speak. And it seems like I'm just a conduit for this event. I've just appeared and kind of galvanized everybody and got everybody together. And it is much more the sum of the parts. You know, there's something magical about this event. And I can't quite put my finger on it, but, you know, there's going to be a lot of conversations and a lot of sharing of information. I don't know whether you know Richard Vobes, but I went on his show the other day, and he's going to come along.
Is he?
I can't put his name on the flyer because he's coming as my guest. He's not going to do it, which is a bit of a shame, but, you know, I'm not going to do that. But he's going to come along, and he's going to do some podcasts live from the event to his audience. So that's a lovely thing for him to come along. We're going to live stream some of it. I don't know, because we've got all the kit. I'm not sure how that's going to work out yet, but it's just it is a celebration. I spoke with somebody about you know, what we should call it, and it's not a festival. It was going to be a festival of ideas, but it's not a festival. A festival is, I don't know, it hasn't got that kind of that vibe about it. It is a celebration of natural earth energies, subtle energies, you know, working with you know, with the elements, elementals, you know, so I just wanted it to be a joyous, I wanted it to be a high frequency emotional event where we're coming along and celebrating who we are, and celebrating the land. So that's why it's called the Shine Celebration.
No, I think that's a brilliant name. So, because I know, like, I've gone to different talks at times, and it's like, well, I want to listen to that one, but that person's on at the same time, and then you sort of see if you can get into one, and then the other one's full up. You know, you really got to jiggle where you want to be and get there on time to get in.
Yeah, well, I didn't. It was completely auspicious how I got this venue, because the people who manage that venue, they run Sundara Community, and then they also rent out the land to the Rainbow Community, Rainbow Camp.
Right.
So there are two communities on that land anyway, and Sundara is the week before my event, and Rainbow is 2 weeks afterwards. And I went to Sundara last year, and I was just in the cafe, and I saw this guy putting the lights up round the tent. And I just said, "Oh, are you shining your light?" sort of thing, making a little joke. And he said, "Yes." And we got talking, and he turned out to be the guy who was running Sundara. And I told him what I did, and his wife came over, and they had a little chat in front of me. And then they just turned to me and said, "Do you want to do the Shine seminars on this field next year?" And I was like, "Well, yeah."
Wow.
And it just literally happened like that. It was literally on that moment. It was so auspicious, and I came away thinking, you know what, this is meant to be.
Yeah.
I now need to gather the you know, our kind of people together and see whether they want to do it. So it is a gift. It's a gift. Yeah.
Fabulous. Yeah. So out of all the speakers over the time you've been doing it, who's like, is there like a few that have really touched you on a deep level, sharing their stories or their wisdom?
Well, that's a very unfair question.
No, but I said a few.
I have been asked that question before, and what I say is, can I have a top 10 of number ones?
Yeah.
So
Right.
I've got to have a top 10 of number ones.
Yeah,
but
fair comment.
What I would say is, like I said, everybody's got an amazing story. And if you say, for instance, you take Giles Bryant, Giles has got this incredible. He does perpetual choirs, by the way, amongst other amazing things. And he has got this amazing capability of being able to raise people's vibration within seconds. He'll come on, and his energy is so high frequency that he will be able to just literally raise the room to a level that is just incredible. So, you know, his kind of superpower, when I'm with Giles, I just get loads out of that superpower that he's got. And you know, it's the same with Chloe. I mean, I asked Chloe a few times and she was too busy, and then just synchronously she moved to Nailsea and I was doing a gig in Matara Gardens, which is about 8 miles away, and she said, "Oh, I'll do it." And the way that she performs on stage with her squeezy box, and she's got this mastery of being able to be entertaining and sing and talk emotionally about things. She's got great emotional intelligence, and so I mean, I was almost in tears. Well, in fact, I think I was in tears when Chloe came off stage, because she took us to places that were just amazing. She really does. And so, you know, her superpower is obviously her, but she's mastered her subject. You know, and somebody like Michael Tingle, who does Qigong and Tai Chi, again, you know, his super. I mean, he does Celtic drawing workshops as well, and he's actually written this beautiful moon diary in conjunction with this other person, and that's been published. But you know, his superpower is getting you to charge yourself. So, you know, in terms of, I think they all bring amazingly high levels of. They're all wisdom keepers. They're all wisdom keepers, every single one of them. And one of the things that I've really tried to do is bring on people who don't necessarily have any public speaking experience. And those people also, you know, have grown, and I've had quite a few that have gone on to do bigger and better things. So to answer your question, I really enjoy my conversations that I have with everyone. I think that I'm looking forward to Laura a lot. I'm looking forward to Michael Feely a lot, and Rory. And I think you know, some of the other speakers who are kind of new. I think Karen So is going to do her Qigong, which will be really interesting. And funnily enough, Dr. Claire Hinsley doesn't talk very much. I did a YouTube thing with her. She does metaphysical alchemy, and you know, I'm really looking forward to seeing her. And not many people know about Claire. And also Mark Keane. I don't know whether you know Mark Keane, but Mark Keane does conscious clubbing, and he's the king of Kundalini. And I highly recommend you get him on your show. He does Kundalini yoga, and he is. I mean, Mark is a hidden gem because he doesn't really go out and do much, but he's in the He's actually decoded the Welsh poem, the mythology of Taliesin, and he's seen that the poem of Taliesin is actually talking about the chakras. So he's decoded that myth into, you know, the raising of the chrism oil and the chakras and the pineal gland. It's all in that story. So he's got very, very deep kind of Celtic knowledge. And, you know, Mark is something else, you know, and he, you know, he's been around for a long time, and, you know, Giles and people know him from years back, down Jody, etc. You know, and he's still doing his thing. A lot of these people, I always say to the speakers, they say, "What do you want me to talk about?" And I say, "Well, you're the leading edge thinker. You know, you do what you think is best." And I'm sure a lot of the speakers, when they get up on stage or whatever, they just do whatever comes into them in that moment. So, you know, everybody's got their own kind of forte, their own experience to bring to the table, and they're all superpowers. They're all superpowers.
Totally. Yeah, that was an unfair question.
well,
I'll ask for the top 10 number ones.
Yeah, that's it. Well, top 5 number ones. But I mean, some, to have somebody, to have, the masculine dowser of Rory there, and to have the feminine dowser of Maria Wheatley there is a really powerful thing in itself. So you've kind of got Maria, who's, I'm not saying she hasn't got masculine energy, because she has, and I'm not saying Rory hasn't got feminine energy, but to have those two there just to balance that energy up is a really beautiful thing. And, Maria's just come back from doing a whole bunch of stuff with Gaia TV. So she's kind of on fire at the moment. And, it's going to be incredible to hear all these stories. I mean, in fact, Matt Bell, I don't know whether you know Matt Bell, but I didn't know about Matt at all. And I interviewed him for my channel, and Matt is doing the most incredible work. Absolutely incredible. And he's going to do a talk on star teachings, I mean, that's really exciting to have Matt there. Amazing. Matt does a lot of very, very beautiful ascension work with his groups down in kind of Bournemouth way, Blandford way. And it's interesting. I don't know what you think about this, but we're all in the southwest. We're all in the Vale of Pewsey. There is something magical going on here.
Yeah, definitely.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that
moving fast.
Yeah.
Very fast lately. Things are speeding up. Yeah, really speeding up.
Yeah. I mean, the day I met you in Glastonbury, the energies were just off the chart, weren't they? And it's relentless as well, isn't it? It's just going on and on and on. I went up to the Chalice Well last week just to spend an hour, and I've been there many, many, many times, and there's different energies up there, but the energy in the Chalice Well was just, it was, I just lay down for 5 minutes. I just completely got healed. It was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Do you know Dave, Sammy and Dave? Dave would be a good one to have on your show.
The gardener.
Yeah.
Funny story. I got introduced to him in Beckett's.
Right.
Which was really hilarious. I just walked in and he was there. And then when I went to the Chalice Well last week, he was just stood there with his wheelbarrow, and we said hello to each other again. So I've met Dave twice auspiciously, not consciously at all. And we did have a very, very deep conversation the first time I met him, just for like 15 minutes. I'd love to spend more time with Dave.
Yeah, no, he's an amazing guy. Now that he's the head gardener of the Chalice Well, I mean, the gardens at the moment are absolutely stunning. Really, I mean, I love going up the Chalice Well, so it's one of my favorite places. But then I love the Abbey as well. So
yeah, well, you're very lucky, aren't you?
Well, yeah, but I'm heading back today. I'm going back for a rest. My God.
Go to Glastonbury, get worn out. Yeah, no, I love the Abbey as well. And in fact, there's a lady in the Chalice Well, I don't know if you've seen her, but she's got a pass, and whenever it's nice weather, she just goes and sits and knits in there. She knits at the top on the left. I've seen her a couple of times now. Well, I just chatted to her and she said, I always come here to knit if the weather's nice. Because it's such a lovely place to be, isn't it?
Well, yeah, good at places any to do your knitting.
Yeah.
Hey, when we had Dave on, it was really interesting that he worked in the Chalice Flower Show in the gardens there. But
Chelsea,
yeah. But what was really interesting, he was quite open about his work with the elementals and the divas when he works with the flowers and the plants at Chelsea. So I'd assume he's definitely.
When he a gardener at Kensington.
Kensington, is it Kensington?
Kensington, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Who do we have that worked at Chelsea then? We had a guy who worked at Chelsea. I thought it was the same guy.
It might well be. I mean,
the fact that he's working at Chalice Wells, I mean, it just goes hand in hand that he's just enhancing that whole relationship, because he came with the green thumb and the green hands. Everything about him is green, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Dave for me is working multidimensionally, and that's one thing that I've noticed is that people have just started doing that. They're just working in different dimensions or densities, I should really say. When I met Dave, we just had this otherworldly conversation, and we didn't really go, that deep, but it was pretty deep for just being in the pub meeting for 5 minutes. So, Dave is working on multiple levels, and it just seems so natural for him to be in the Chalice Well.
Yeah, definitely, and he's a great musician as well. So okay. So is there anybody that you haven't got on the show or any of your seminars yet that you would like to get on? Is there anybody, any keys? Is there like maybe 3 or 4 speakers that you might like?
To be honest with you, the name that actually comes up more in my mind is John Stuart Reid.
Oh yeah,
who does the cymatics and the cymoscope.
Oh, is that the guy in the pyramids?
Yeah. He's I've got one of his cymatics machines.
Yeah, Carol's got some stuff from John, because we did a workshop with him about, oh my God, it must have been about 20 years ago. So, way back. But yeah, carry on. Yeah, he's amazing one.
Yeah, he's the one name that I think really stands out, and I have asked him. I've spoken to his son. I have had some communications with him, but he's the Shine Seminars is very much about putting people forward and promoting people who are working with the energies and being multidimensional. And it's interesting with John because he is very scientific, and he works with the Shift Network a lot. So he's got his thing, and he's working doing that. And actually, we're a little bit small for John, I think. We're a little bit parochial, really. But he embodies a space which is very, very important, I feel, at the moment, which bridges, the kind of what I would call esoteric science and the observable reality. So he's bridging. He's actually creating. He's showing people observable reality evidence for multidimensional subjects. This graphic that I sent you, this is interesting because I don't know what you think about this, guys, and it'd be good to ask you. But this diagram is actually from Mark Passio. Do you know Mark Passio?
No.
Mark Passio is an American, and it's interesting, this story, because he was a Satanist, and he went quite deep into that world, and then he had this epiphany, and he came out of that world and just started just communicating information about natural law. And his most famous talk is about natural law. And he's an amazing guy because he talks about the darkness, let's call it that, and he faced that, and he went deep in that, and he's come out, and now he's working for the light, exposing that. But he did this diagram, and when I do presentations myself, not very often. I did one last week in Shaftesbury. It was called Frequency Wars. It's all about frequencies.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. But so this diagram is really, for me at the moment, what's happening, because we're living in the apocalypse, because there's this great unveiling, and the word apocalypse, it means to unveil and to show the truth. Because we've been kept in this control system for thousands of years, people are not aware that they're in a control system, and this particular part of history is where we are going to free ourselves from this control system. And actually this has been spoken about for many years. Dolores Cannon talked about this, amongst other people. John Varlo McKezeldek talked about it as well. And what's happening is that there's been a lot of hidden knowledge, which is the esoteric on this chart. and that's been kept from the general public. And Mark's done this diagram to show that the truth is always the truth, and it has a frequency, and it sits at the heart of everything. And the religions of the world have different layers, of which in the middle, they all go to the truth. On the outside is the exoteric. So as it says in this, it's intended, the exoteric side of all religions is for the masses. And it's kind of to, I'm not going to use the word soul harvesting because that's a bit dark, but it is in a way a distraction from the truth. So that exoteric knowledge is just for people to be kept in a particular mindset. And there are truths in there, but it's not the core truth that is going to be exposed over the next few years. And the esoteric knowledge, and all esoteric means is hidden knowledge. It's occulted knowledge. The occult is hidden knowledge. Inside, all the religions have this truth and this esoteric knowledge, which is usually portrayed by symbolism and allegories, metaphors, and it's veiled so that it's kept away from the masses. And what's happening at the moment is that the esoteric knowledge is all coming out, and it's just naturally coming out as the planet ascends, because the planet is ascending. The consciousness of the planet is ascending at the moment, and that's happening to all sentient beings, all humans, all plants, everything. The whole planet is ascending, and as that happens, this esoteric knowledge is just literally coming out. And I've asked questions of the Shine Seminars audience over the last 18 months or so, just as a little litmus test on where people are at. Because I get a very mixed, I get half kind of what I would call spiritually aware people, and half people who are just waking up to it. I asked at one of my talks, I can't remember when it was now, last October, I said, how many people here know about the pineal gland? And 15 years ago, if I'd asked that question, it might have been 2 or 3 people. Everybody put their hand up.
Really?
Everybody put their hand up.
Yeah.
And there was 45 people in the room.
Gosh.
I just got goosebumps. I was just like, that is an absolute sign. That's an observable sign that things are raising. And, people are starting to talk to me about really interesting occulted ideas that have been kept away from us. People are openly talking about chakras now, very openly. People are talking about mindfulness and conscious breathing, which is also an occulted secret in a lot of ways. So there's all these beautiful subtle energies, as I call them, that are now coming out into the open. And Mark Passio's little diagram there is so powerful because I actually use that at the beginning of almost all my presentations, because it just shows you that there has been this kind of ring of consciousness that's been placed around the truth to stop us knowing the truth. But it's all coming out. Yeah. And I don't know what you think about that.
Definitely. Little by little,
yeah,
more and more is opening out, and people are questioning things now, and really they're I think they're picking up on the energies that there's a huge change going on, and they are becoming more awake, and they are questioning, and they are wondering what really is going on. So there's an awful lot of confusion going on at the moment as well, massively. But we're all doing our bit to hold the light, the frequencies, to be here for each other, to support each other, setting up little groups, and there's so much more support now for people on so many levels. It's just incredible.
Yeah, there's a huge alignment going on, it was spoken about in 2020. I spent a lot of time on different groups in America, because America is a real battlefield of consciousness. It is really being played out there.
Yeah.
And it's going okay, actually, because all the truth is coming out, even though the system, in inverted commas, is not acknowledging the truth as such. It's all coming out through the system as well. So we are seeing these huge waves of disclosure coming right across the board. And
there's plenty still to come, eh?
Well, for me, my consciousness went through the roof in 2020. It just went woof, and I reckon I was pretty together myself. I mean, it's a journey, and you
really.
You're never, it's a journey, isn't it? And you've got your own ascension.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day who was talking about, this might well be the first time in history that human beings collectively are ascending together on a mass wave, and that is a very powerful thing. I mean, and because before the ascension path was individual, and you went through your own journey, and your own working out what's going on and learning your lessons, etc. But there is this. There definitely feels to me like there is a collective awakening. And I said at the beginning of 2020 or September 2020, I was going around like just everybody's going to have their mind blown. I just kept saying everybody's going to have their mind blown. Everybody's going to have their mind blown. Even the most enlightened people are still going to have their mind blown. If you know nothing, you're going to know lots. If you know lots, you're going to know even more. So everybody's consciousness is just going through the roof. And I've learned massive amounts over the last 3 years, and I've assimilated massive amounts of stuff. And my practices and the way that I live in my life is just. I mean, my wife actually said to me, she said, "You've totally changed." And I said, "So have you." It's and I truly believe it, because we're having conversations like this now, aren't we? And we're meeting amazing people, and we've all got we're all adding to the pot. None of us have all the answers, but all of us have all the answers.
And together, the collective as a whole. And it's like now, if you don't know about, say, having a treatment or something, you can say, you just put out there, does anybody know? And then a lot of people come back with the information, and you can make up your own mind. So, there's so much information available for people, like yourselves, about bringing people together, and it's like connecting all the dots now.
It's really interesting. We did a 2-day event in Chester Blades, which is near Bruton, and there's a lovely space there called the Green Heart Space. And if anybody wants to go and have a cabin with a nice circle and in the country, the Green Heart Space is great. And very much, I'm trying to do a talk at the moment about how the photonic light's coming in and upgrading our DNA, which is an open conversation now. A couple of years ago, when we did the Shine seminars down there, I was chatting to this guy who came from Liverpool, and I was saying, because I was addicted to taking photos of the sun for about a year. I just was going out and taking photos of the sun like every day, and I was like, "This is not the same sun. This is not the same sun. This is not It's a different sun. It's a different energy." And I was talking to this guy, and I said, do you think that this is the same sun? And he said, "I don't think it is. I think it's got an energy which is coming from somewhere else." I am trying to put this talk together, but it's so complicated. And if I'm going to stand up in front of people, I need to be able to qualify what I'm doing. But certainly, I personally know there's 3 factors, and it'd be good to talk to you about this now, because this is really powerful stuff.
I've interrupted you, so I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah,
I've been stepping in there because I had to put something up to do with the sun, because somewhere or another you're going to be bringing it up, and now I've brought it up. This hair was taken in New Zealand 2 weeks ago, and it was put on the main newspaper in the Bay of Plenty in New Zealand. I can bring the paper up, but I've just saved the photo of how the individual took a photo, because they saw 2 suns. Yeah. And of course they said, "Oh, it's an optical illusion," and all that stuff. Anyway, just saying. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because there are cosmic happenings There's no doubt about that. It's just, you can't use your left brain at the moment for a lot of this stuff. You just got to assimilate it and park it and not pass judgment. That's part of this process we're going through. It's not about saying, oh, that's that, or I'm going to put a box around that idea, or I know what that is, or I know what it isn't. It's not about that, because things are changing constantly. One of the reasons that the obsoletes, as I like to call them, the parasitic controllers have done what they've done is because they know the secrets of the absolute, and they know that if they don't do their ultimate AI prison planet now, it's going to be too late. They've timed it and for this time, because it's very clear that I got banned on Facebook. I had about 1,400 people in my group on Facebook, but most of my conversations on Facebook were to do with 3 types of battles that are going on. Well, actually 4. One of them was the battle for the consciousness. The second one was the off-world battle. There is off-world activities that are going on. The surface battle, which is us in our observable life on the planet, and then the battle that's being fought underground, in the deep underground bases and places like that. And I've always accepted those to be truths, because if you can think it, it exists. So, so going back to Plato. Plato talked about the central sun, and he talked about, and some think, oh well, that's metaphorical for God, or the central sun is a metaphor for God, and it could well be. It could be the super consciousness of the one true creator. It could be infinite source, but there is clearly a different energy with our sun, and it's partly to do with the precession of the equinoxes, and there are loads of clues to say that the precession of the equinoxes in the Vedic tradition says that we're moving out of Kali Yuga, which is darkness, and we're not actually moving into the golden age. And I hate to dispel people's ideas of that. People think that we're moving into a golden age. What we're actually moving into in the Vedic tradition is the Bronze Age, and then it's silver, and then it's the Golden Age. But let's not be down about that, because we're going to go through a period of profound healing. And I say this when people spiritually bypass and say, "Oh, we're going to all be telepathic and clairsentient and have all these amazing." Well, yes, we are, but we have got a huge amount of trauma to heal and a huge amount of internal cleaning to heal before we get to that stage. So we are moving into that golden age, and we're moving very, very quickly, within years. It's not even decades, into a different way of being. So the precession of the equinoxes, what's happened is that we've actually moved, the planet itself has moved above the galactic equator. That's happened. Now, if we've moved above the galactic equator, that means that we are receiving light from different parts of the universe. That's what's happening. I spoke to a global alchemist, a grid worker, and a high priestess the other day, and she said there's actually 7 suns all in alignment at the moment. Wow. 7 suns, and they're all the central suns in the galaxy are all receiving this huge, great. Some people call it a galactic current sheet, and Rory talks about this a bit. There's plenty of people out there who are looking at those kind of what I would call astronomical, actual, real world scientific observations of the galaxy. There's the guys at Suspicious Observers are doing that, although they are into catastrophism. I mean, it doesn't even work as a word. I'm not into the catastrophe part of it.
No.
But, you know, they're talking about a galactic current sheet. They're talking about the magnetic strength of the planet moving and changing. They're talking about solar flares, all this kind of cosmic activity that's happening, and it is happening 100%. I personally think it's for the good. I don't think there is going to be any catastrophes at all. That's just a fear program. And that's the last thing we want to do, is be in that fear program. So this talk I'm trying to work on basically is trying to convey this idea that there is a cosmic shift going on. And in fact, in the zodiac, you probably know this more than me, but is it Sagittarius, the guy with the bow? Yeah. So he actually shows us where the galactic central sun is. That's why that image is chosen. So at the end of his arrow is the galactic central sun, and that sun is bringing in photonic light that is changing our DNA. And interestingly enough, there's a book. I haven't got it to hand actually, but there's a guy called Dr. Subraj, and he actually, this is really interesting. Actually, it's beautiful. This is so he in his book he's got a chapter on light, and I'm doing a talk in Glastonbury, funny enough, in October on light.
Are you?
Yeah, it's called Becoming Light, and I'm writing that at the moment. So what Dr. Subraj says is that we have in our bodies a thing called ATP, and that's an actual chemical. It's an actual chemical, and it's the human version of chlorophyll. So when the sunlight hits a plant, the chlorophyll turns the sunlight into energy. We have the equivalent, and it's called ATP, and it basically converts the sunlight into energy. And it's interesting because I had a conversation the other day about somebody, and in the middle of that conversation, I had this epiphany where I realized that we're not going to be eating as much in the future.
No.
we're going to have less density. Our frequency is going to raise. We won't need to have physical material foods as much as we are at the moment. And we don't need to fuel or feed ourselves. We have to get into the language of charging ourselves. So what we do is we charge. So we'll be able to go out and be in the sun. Just like if you watch animals, what do? They move around where the sun is. Yeah. And what they're doing is they're charging their bodies with sunlight. And they've got a version of ATP that changes it into energy. So it's a whole paradigm shift. So in this book, he says that there's only two ways you can program your DNA. And that is through sound and light. So you program yourself through sound and light. And almost certainly, I can guarantee this, going forward, that the number one healing modality will be sound. Guaranteed.
Definitely.
It was in the past. Churches with the choir boys, and the bells and singing, there were healing frequencies. I went to Wells Cathedral recently, and I was in what they call the octagon room. And I went in there and I was just like, I've never been in a room like this at all, ever. And I sat there and I was like, what is this room? And we went into the library, me and my two friends afterwards. And the guy there was like, oh, yes, that's where the squires used to go. And they used to talk about taxation and, the harvesting and machinery and labor. And I came in and I was like, that was utter rubbish. That room is a healing chamber. It's a healing chamber. And a few days later, I found out that there's these 4 sound therapists, healers, who are going and doing a gig there, I think this weekend. And if you lie down in that room and you use the different frequencies, 432, whatever it is, 396, 528, all those different frequencies, the solfeggio frequencies, that room will heal you. It's a healing room. And, you know, so what Dr. Subraj says is, he says you can change and heal DNA with sound, and you can also change and heal DNA with light. And they are the only two ways you can change DNA without physically going in there and doing the nano nonsense. So naturally, sound and light in fact, sound and light are the same thing. If you get up into the real science of sound and light, it is the same. It's all frequencies. Green actually resonates at around 500 or 528. That's why the heart chakra is colored green. And that's why the love vibration is 528, because it's that resonance. So, you know, I've been telling people, and it is the thing I tell people, it's the one thing I say to people more than anything else: go out and be in the sun. This sun at the moment, especially around the times of the equinoxes, is super, super powerful, and you can just raise your consciousness just by being in the sun. Just going on just a different level, I'll just talk about this because this is part of the talk that I'm trying to put together. The pineal gland is actually a piezoelectric crystal. It's called calcite, and it's tiny. So it's a piezoelectric crystal. So it reacts to light and it reacts to electricity. And if you look at platelets in the blood, they're surrounded by light. Kirlian photography, you know, is on the photon light in your hands. In fact, I'm a biowell practitioner, and I never do it. I should get out there and do my machine. But the greatest thing you can do at the moment is to actually go out and be in the sunlight, and sun yourself, because every time you go out into the sunlight, it raises your consciousness, it activates your pineal gland, it sets off all those chemicals, and you're literally moving up the scale. Your consciousness is getting more and more attuned with the divine being that you are, because that's the key thing. People don't realize that they are this divine bit of technology. So, you know, it's all to play for. And I don't know whether, you know the story of, it's quite a long story actually, but, you know, there's this idea that there's a great awakening, you know, of the great awakening, and people have been throwing that around. But when you've got a photonic system of light coming in, that's the reason why we have chemtrails, by the way. There's multi-layered reasons why, but the main one is to stop us receiving the photonic light.
Of course.
And 100%. So ultimately, the Great Awakening cannot be stopped, which is what people say, because they can't stop the sunlight. They just can't get it out. You know, they can't stop that, and you know, nothing can stop the sun doing its work. They will try as hard as they can to stop this process. And you know, the sun is super, super important for this consciousness and moving out of this dark control system that we've been in. So, you know, well, it's interesting actually talking about this now, because it's really focused my mind, and I want to do this talk because it's a very powerful message to communicate. And I have been speaking to people, and I've said, you know, I've asked people, I've said, what do you think about the sun? When I drive along the road, the shadows, the light and the darkness is so much more of a contrast now. It's like a silver. The sun used to be much yellower, but it's like a real silver. And you know, that is the one thing that I try and say to people, you know, go out and be in the sun, because it is so powerful.
Especially as it's summertime at the moment over here.
Yeah.
We've got to make the most of every moment, eh?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I had two friends, and they pursued a path of breatharianism, which meant getting up early in the morning for that 20 minutes sun gazing with open eyes to absorb the sunlight. And Jimmy had glasses that were so thick that he couldn't even get contact lenses. And by 12 months, he had clear vision, and his weight had dropped off. And they were basically, to start that process, they went on to soups, vegetable soups and water and fruit drinks. But in a period of time, all they did was just kept up the liquid. A phenomenal story there. And if you go to Nicolas Cage, he lives around your area. He did a movie called City of Angels, where all the angels will always go down to the beach and watch the sunrise come through.
I think there's going to be more of that, Jeff. I think that we're going to see more and more people going towards that, and just being very light, living lighter. That's what my talk in Glastonbury in October is about. It's about living lighter and having less density. And it's interesting to hear these stories about people who are taking that plunge into breatharianism, fresh arianism.
There was a guy when I was in Hawaii. I couldn't tell you what his name is now. When I stayed with Joan Ocean, 20 odd years ago, whatever, and he'd been doing it for 20 odd years. I mean, he's passed on now, but yeah, and like he was saying, you just breathe in the light, you fill yourself with light, and like I know we say, Blossom Goodchild does a mantra she gets everybody to say, I am the love, I am the light, I am the truth, I am. So when you're troubled or can't sleep, you're affirming, and apparently there's codes within those words.
Absolutely.
But also Ian Welsh, I don't know if you know of Ian Welsh. He talks about he said it was going to be September, I think, the second sun will be, you will now see them, but he reckons it was speeding up, and it's going to be, well, any time now you will see in the sky the two suns.
Well, it's interesting. In fact, I nearly wore it today, but I've got a hoodie which is got two suns on it. And if you remember the first scene in Star Wars, the very first Star Wars movie, when Luke is on the planet Tatooine, there's two suns. Tatooine has two suns. And I bought that hoodie for precisely that reason, because I thought, that there's the two suns. It's great. It's a great hoodie. I love it. I love wearing it because it reminds me that there's all these cosmic things going on. We have to. I don't know whether you know Michael Salla, who does the exopolitics.
I met him.
Yeah. So Michael Salla's got a great phrase. He says, "We're going to become our Star Trek selves. We're moving into being galactic. The human race is becoming galactic." And it really it feels like that. It feels like we're joining the galactic family.
Hey, coming back to the early morning sun, I remember with a group of people, we went over to North Stradbroke Island, which is a protective barrier to protect Brisbane. And we got up early in the morning before sunrise, and we're sitting there, and it was freezing for us Queenslanders, I have to tell you. It's currently 15 degrees and it's 8 o'clock at night, so you can understand early morning it's about 8 degrees. I'm just trying to sow the scene for you guys in England there.
Yeah.
Anyway, all of a sudden birds started turning up and sitting in the trees and on the power lines waiting for the sun to come up. And it was really amazing because the ocean was calm as anything, completely flat, just like the water in that lake there. And as the sun came up, it sent a pulse, and you could feel the pulse, and you could feel it like the start of the waves. And then after about 10, 15 minutes, the waves started to come in. It's like music. It was like sets of music coming through. And then we were absorbing it all, and then the birds started singing away, and then within 20 minutes, they all flew off, and that was the end of it. It was really a magical 20 minutes. Yeah.
It's the bird tribe.
Mm.
Yeah, but it's just amazing how the ocean went from calmness and all of a sudden magnetic pulse or whatever's gone, turned on the light bulb, and then all of a sudden now we've got a surge of waves coming in musical sets.
Yeah, it is magical. It's a magical time to be alive. I said the other day, if you're not having fun, you're not in the game. All that chaos and nonsense out there is just absolute proof that everything's collapsing. It is a beautiful time to be alive, and conversations we're having and the people we're meeting. And I've never had so many friends in all my life. Even people, it's just like, it's just amazing. And I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that that they want to be part of a community, and want to be part of a wider extended family.
Yeah, definitely.
And that is phenomenal, because we've all been isolated in these little boxes, and suddenly we're being open-hearted about things, and working with each other and wanting to help each other out more. So it's been a long time coming, really.
Well, we're in it now, eh? We signed up for this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting. When I gave my talk in Shaftesbury the other day, I mean, just as an aside, I don't talk very often, and when I do talk, I do the presentations like 2 days before, and I work on different ideas. And I knew that half that room of 80 people was going to be literally normies, like people who like absolute off the street, not aware of anything at all. And the first part of my talk was just real basic grounding. So I did things like, filter your water, distill your water, try not to eat a lot of processed foods, try to be as natural as you can, try not to, support big companies, try to buy locally, grow your own food, just real basic stuff. Nothing, I'm not saying anything wildly, amazing, but it was all just grounding and just trying to get people to realize that this is what we have to do going forward. If we're going to detach and not give our energy to this system anymore. And then the second half was all to do with frequencies. And when I told my wife, Sarah, what I was going to do, she went, that's just, what are you doing? And I said, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. And I'm just going to do it. And whatever happens, happens. And if I don't take people along with me, then so be it. I can't sit in this nice, safe bubble anymore.
No.
I've got to come out. And obviously, I'm not going to talk about,
Yeah.
I'm not going to start talking about Pleiadian consciousness or whatever. But at the same time, I'm not going to just talk about farming and, those sort of grounded things. And I gave the talk and I talked about frequencies, how there's a very small space that we can see, the frequency of the observable reality. And then there's this enormous unobservable reality that also has loads of frequencies in it. And I talked about, Dr. David Hawkins' frequency of consciousness map that he does, where 200 is, courage, and then, 500 is love. And I talked about, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do being absolutely in line with the chakras. And that's what that is. And when you sing that, you can actually just tune your chakras. And that's been in Disney movies. This is what I'm saying about all this esoteric knowledge coming out. All these things that were hidden are just coming out now. And at the end of it, I got a really strong round of applause from everyone in unison. And I just thought, you know what? There is something happening, because nobody left. Everybody was accepting and willing to listen to what I had to say. And it, I'm not saying frequencies is like off the hook, but it's certainly getting people to think in a totally different way. Mm-hmm. And I had people come up to me afterwards, and that was absolutely brilliant kind of confirmation that what I was doing was right. And there was a couple of women who came up and they started talking about starseeds and stuff with me, and I just thought, you know what, these conversations are brilliant, aren't they? Where else would I go? And suddenly people started talking to me about. This lady was saying, "Oh, I feel like I've got like a Syrian consciousness, and I feel like I'm bringing in this otherworldly consciousness sometimes when I meditate." And I was just like, "This is fantastic." So we're moving into realms that we haven't moved into before. It's really powerful. I don't know whether you found that where you are, guys.
Yeah.
Well, we had a guy called Michael Grayson, who was called Michael Cafe Lockout. and he's been going around Australia for the last 3 years, interviewing mums and dads and grandparents, and finding out what's happened with the mandates and the lockdowns and all that stuff. And he was a really investigative journalist, the one we haven't seen for years, and we have a mainstream media sort of knock him about and trying to, ridicule the guy and paint him, using Machiavelli politics to create the divide. And there was a thing about Michael that came out of a conversation was, you probably had the same energy, and people rushed to buy toilet paper, right? And then the media started feeding that toilet paper debacle.
Yeah.
But in Australia, not one mainstream media organisation did any advertising or marketing or promotion, but 1 million plus Australians organically upped and went down to Canberra, the home of, the seat of Australia's Parliament House. 1 million plus, and turned up there in force. But something else on another level of consciousness reached out and broadcast the message that they needed to go down to Canberra, the seat of Australia's politics. And not one mainstream media organisation gave that any energy whatsoever. They never promoted it, never showed it. They just said there's a couple of thousand people down there. But you ask me, there is something else going on. Metaphorically and esoterically, there's another broadcast going out where people have reached to that level of frequency, and they're picking up on that broadcast, which is not, obviously of man-made origins.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you talk about that, because I had this, I get my own kind of ideas that come in, and I have to sit with them a while before I talk about them with people or say them publicly, definitely. But I get this feeling that we're moving into this unity consciousness, but it's only going to be temporary. I think that people are thinking, just like you said, Jeff, there's this, it's like we're tapping into like an Akashic record, a space that is just sits in some other dimension or density, and then that will have a role to play, and then we will go back to having individuation. So because clearly the individual path of ascension is really important for our own journeys, but there is this movement into, well, it's kind of interesting because if you look at scripture, I have a very open mind about Christianity, because I know that it's there to keep the truth from us, but I also know that it's there to give us clues. But it does say that that in these times, Jesus will come back, and that's a metaphor for Christ consciousness. And Christ consciousness is unity consciousness. And it does say that the Antichrist will come 2,000 years after Jesus is around, and that is exactly what's happening with the AI and with the technocracy. So, I feel that the Christ consciousness is coming back, which is what I call the organic human blueprint. I don't know whether you've heard that phrase before, but very much within our communities, we are holding space and love and light for the organic human blueprint, because we are made in the image of God. We are made in the image of source consciousness, and I just feel that we'll go into this. Well, we're in it already. We're in it already, into this unity consciousness, Christ consciousness, where we're all activated to really work to protect the natural scheme of things. And then when we've kind of done our job, we'll retain elements of that unity consciousness, but we will go back to being into an individuated being as well, because as source gives us the opportunity, or gives itself the opportunity to experience itself through our fractal version of itself, which is what the super consciousness is, and we're just fractal versions of that experiencing itself. That has to carry on, that has to continue. It's interesting actually, because I was talking to somebody about the AI the other day, because really and truly the AI is the actual enemy. I'm just going to say that it really is. And in Star Trek, I'm not a Trekkie, by the way, but I was talking about the AI, and this guy said to me, "Oh yeah, there's this thing called the Borg in the AI," and I was like, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, in the show, it's a artificial consciousness that nobody knows where it came from, and it started outside of the universe, and it's here to gobble up everything that's natural." And I was just like, "Hold on, that sounds a bit familiar," So there are these little, I think at the kind of in this pyramidal structure of the obsoletes, as I like to call them, the control structure, they do understand the absolute. They understand. They have all this knowledge that the everyday people haven't got. But they do give us little clues in the media, in programs and in books and all sorts of things that they release to us as to the true nature of the oneness. And that story about the Borg just kind of says it all, because it was just like, well, they've been telling us in Star Trek for years that the real enemy comes from outside the universe, and it is an artificial intelligence. And in fact, 2001: A Space Odyssey, the Stanley Kubrick film, and obviously Stanley Kubrick knew shed loads of stuff, Eyes Wide Shut and the moon landings, etc. He was clearly well involved in that, that kind of strata of life, if you want to call it. But 2001 is all about the man against the machine, that whole film, and how man can overcome the machine. And it's not difficult. War of the Worlds is the same. It's the same story. It's about a huge, great machine that gets killed by a little tiny bug. In 2001, when he gets into the brain, he starts pulling the brain out, because it's artificial.
It is, but Hell, when you get to 2010, when the guy who created Hell gets in there and finds there's a subroutine that's been put on there by the military, which conflicted with his original programming. But that was just a side story, because at the end of the day, it showed there was an intelligence there that put those monoliths out on planet Earth for the apes to touch, and then the next second it's gone to the moon. Man's reached that consciousness, and then it's gone out to Jupiter. And it's when Dave goes out in that little craft, and he ends up going inside that monolith, and it's a merger of human potential with the knowledge that's been stored in that big, huge monolith that creates a second sun. But it's a really interesting story. I mean, you mentioned Star Trek. The original movie has a similar bearing there, where they've got this energy that comes into our star system, and if you attack it, you'll get taken out. But if you go with love, then you have the door to go in, and then what you find is that they talk about Vija, and when they finally get to the source, they find that Vija is Voyager 4. It's been sent as a space probe 200 years previously by NASA, which went through a black hole. And it's got a simple program, which is to go and accumulate much knowledge and then bring it back to the third planet in the solar system. And it ends up through the black hole on another civilization who reads the program, and they create the craft that allows it to come back through all the different star systems to come to our star system. And at the end of the day, it's got all this knowledge, but it requires its creator, which is the human capacity to actually imagineering. And so we see the merger of the human with the machine, and we go to a whole new dimension of knowledge and understanding. It's a really profound particular movie, that one.
It makes me want to watch it. Makes me want to go and watch it. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, with the Star Trek, because Gene Roddenberry was involved in those channelings. I can't remember the lady's name, but Louise something or other. And he was party to that. He was party to these channelings. And if you watch, I've got the first series. I was never a Trekkie, and I was never really a fan when I was young. Well, partly because my dad didn't let me watch TV. But I bought the original series a couple of years ago. And if you watch each episode, every single episode has one really powerful theme, just one theme. and they're very, very stark, those shows, and the whole story is surrounding around one theme. And he clearly got channeled information to be able to write that first series 100%. It was definitely an off-world thing that happened there, and I think it's been written about that he was involved in these meetings with this woman who was channeling, and but it's very obvious once you know that those stories just say this is this bit of the human condition, this is this bit of the human condition, and every single episode is just very direct as to what that message is. It's very, very powerful, and I didn't realize that Star Trek had that, but because it's tapping into that energy, it's universal, and that's why it's so popular, and that's why it rings truth, because it has tapped into some sort of universal energy.
True, a bit like the movie Avatar, isn't it? I mean, who would have thought that would be the #1 box office success?
Yeah.
It tapped into the psyche.
Well, it's funny that, because I didn't watch Avatar until last year, which is bizarre. But I watched it, and I mean, it just makes so much sense watching it during the apocalypse as opposed to 10 years ago, because it makes so much more sense now. And the scene in that film that really brought, in fact, I started growing my hair again because of it, believe it or not, because obviously I'm going bald, so I'm just compensating. But it's the scene with there's the tree of life, there's the mother tree. Yeah. You know, and they go along and they wrap their hair around the branches, and it's just such a powerful scene, and nothing's said. It's just images, but it's such a powerful scene because it's showing you that we are antennae, we're two-way antennae, and if we truly are at one with our surroundings, with our natural surroundings, we can tap into, you know, the Akashic records, for another want of a better term. And Avatar's just, and it's obviously the machine, you know, the military is the machine, it's the AI, it's the technocracy, and it's there smashing its way through the forest. So it's the same story. It's kind of like the perennial battle of the human being is the natural organic human blueprint against this hard metallic artificial intelligence that is just running a program and has no relevance to, you know, it's the same as in the Matrix. All Agent Smith in the Matrix is just an artificial intelligence just running, you know, those programs. You know, they do tell us. They tell us. They put it in. I don't know whether you've ever seen Jupiter Ascending. Have you seen that film? Yeah. That film's just full of it, isn't it? It's absolutely full of amazing.
Androchrome.
Yeah, it's got this. Well, I can't really talk about the scene because it's a bit of a spoiler. But that film, even though it's got tons and tons of incredible stuff in it, it talks about greys and reptilians, and it talks about power structures. It talks about how Earth is just part of a portfolio that other consciousnesses run. The key theme in that film is actually to do with cosmic consent, and about how there is a natural law. This is what Mark Passio talks about. He talks about natural law and consent and complying. And in the film, there's a whole sub-story that becomes the main story towards the end of the film, and it's to do with consent. And the whole premise of the film and the power struggle and the conflict of the film is based on whether this one person gives this other person consent. And once they make that natural, cosmic, universal contract between each other, it's all over. And it's all about, is this one person going to consent to this person? And it's just really dramatic, because what this whole, we heard during lockdowns and things, I will not comply. I will not consent. I will not do that. And once you withdraw your energy from the system, it falls apart. They're relying on us to give them consent, and it's a major theme. It's a major theme that the human being has to learn, is to not give consent to things that do not serve itself. If it doesn't serve you, don't give it consent. And you will be immune to that energy of that nefarious entity if you don't give it consent. It will have to go away because that's the universal law, and they understand that as well. It's interesting with Jupiter Ascending because it was written by the Wachowski twins, who wrote The Matrix.
Who stole the idea of the lady?
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously they're living as transgenders now. They're fully part of it. Well, it's interesting because I mean, this is it's an interesting conversation to have, but I call it, do you take the offer, right? So it's like Simon Cowell and all that lot, and Hollywood and Harvey Weinstein. If somebody comes up to a young person and says, "Do you want fame and fortune?" Now, first of all, that is a nefarious energy that's talking to you, and your ego will respond to that and go, "Yes, I want the fame and fortune, and I want the Ferrari and the big house." And they're going into that lower density of wanting the material world. And then whoever opens that door and you step through the door, once you step through the door closes behind you, which is eyes wide shut. That's what that whole film's about. It's about going into the den of vipers and either agreeing to what they're doing or not agreeing to what they're doing. And once you go through the door, it's over. Yeah, because you've accepted the offer. And then you've got to go through with their nefarious plans. And then another door opens and they go through, and it gets darker and darker and darker and darker and darker until you're doing stuff that is absolutely disgusting. That's the way that degeneracy works. So those people that have taken the offer, like the Wachowski twins, they have to do whatever they're told within those confines. But that doesn't mean that they don't know, and that doesn't mean that they don't want to get the message out. It's just like Stanley Kubrick did. There's certain rules that they have to play within, and if they play within those rules, then they're going to be okay. And if they step out of those rules, then they're going to lose their life almost certainly. So, with films like Jupiter Ascending, they released that to it was tiny amounts of cinemas. The first weekend was low thousands. Hollywood did not want to release that movie at all because it's absolutely packed full of disclosure. It's one of the, I don't know whether I don't know when you saw it, Jeffrey, but I saw it about 18 months ago, and it's just packed. The whole film is just rammed full of stuff. I mean, the fact that the girl's called Jupiter, it's straight away. It's like Jupiter is the king of the solar system. It's Zeus. It is that energy, and the film's called Jupiter Ascending. The Wachowski twins are telling us that there is a new power in town, and Saturn is not controlling us anymore. It's the energy of Jupiter, which is now absolutely the dominant power in the solar system. And that film is called Jupiter Ascending. It's full of it. And it's interesting talking about films. I'll just add this because Sarah and I, we love films, and it's such a shame since we've known when we realized that Hollywood was so nefarious, and you think, oh, all your heroes just all become your enemies, or people that you don't resonate with or whatever. But there was a film, we've watched a couple of films over the last year, and we're like, this film doesn't go anywhere. It's like there's no conflict, there's no character, there's no catharsis, there's no there's no tone of voice, there's no look and feel. And then I found out that lots of films in Hollywood are being written by AI. And when I've said that to people, they've gone, "Oh, that's rubbish." Well, I did some research on it, and the Scriptwriters Guild of America are on strike, permanent, because all their jobs are being taken away because of the AI, and these AI are writing these films. And you can tell a film that is written by AI. You can watch it, and you'll watch it, and nothing happens. It's just a story about something that happens. It's got no human interest. So anyway, there's a film that's come out earlier this year. I think it's called Babylon, and it's got Brad Pitt in it and Margaret Robbie, and it's well worth watching. But it's a really horrible film. It's really long as well. but it is kind of worth watching if you want to see what Hollywood was created out of. So Hollywood was created out of absolute degeneracy. It's an absolute pit of filth. And that film, that's what that film talks about. It talks about how Hollywood is built on layers of just absolute disgusting degeneracy. There's a great scene in it where Margot Robbie goes mad at a rich dinner. But that film is written by AI. And it's clearly written by AI because it just goes on and on and on and on and on. It's just absolute nonsense. It's 3.25 hours long. And nothing, you know, you could write that story because that all that story is telling us is that Hollywood is built on degeneracy. And that's a very simple concept to get across. And you could do it in 1 hour and 20 minutes either. But, you know, you can see that the production of Hollywood, and it's another sign that system is dying. The films that are coming out of Hollywood now are pretty shocking. There's no really good films anymore because there's no energy anymore because they're losing their power. And that is another sign that they're losing their power. You know, I was very, I was very pleased. Well, you know, I felt good about, you know, Hollywood when they came out with the last Matrix movie. Because the last Matrix movie, which is obviously a Wachowski's film, that is actually what I would call a white hat movie. And at the end of that film, in fact, I spoke about this yesterday with somebody. It's a really powerful film, that film, because in that film, Neo and Trinity meet each other in the cafe, and they don't know each other. They kind of know each other, but they're like, oh, I know who you are, but I don't know who you are.
Correct.
And it's because they don't recognize each other. And the symbol of Trinity, obviously she's called Trinity, but the symbol of Neo, the one, and Trinity is that he is the divine masculine and she is the divine feminine. And that's the roles they play in that film. And at the end of that film, and it's a magical ending, is they've got the demon agent in front of them and they stand there and they've gone through all this chaos of actually remembering and resourcing themselves to who they are. And they remember why they're there. And they remember their roles of who they are and why they've come together. And they destroy the demon. And then they look at each other and they fly off together. And they say, I don't know whether they say it or not, but clearly the symbolism is so powerful, is that when the divine masculine and the divine feminine come together, they can do anything. It's the ultimate power play. And that they form the Trinity of the divine masculine and the divine feminine and source spirit. And that film is so powerful. And at the end, they fly off, and it's just like, and when I watched it, I was like, wow, that was brilliant, because it shows you that if you can raise those sorts of energies within you and you can come together, then you can just do anything and you're invincible. And I thought that was really powerful, because it would have been very easy for Hollywood to have dumbed that film down and just made an absolute pig of a film. So these messages are coming out. They're still coming out. And even within the systems of control, like Hollywood, these messages are coming out. Nothing can stop this ascension path. Nothing at all. And, you know, like we're saying, it's very, very exciting to be around. You know, it really is.
Well, on that note,
yeah.
Oh, it's been really fascinating, and it's been lovely to have you as a guest and sharing all your stories and you know, about how you've been putting everything together and your knowledge and wisdom. So thank you once again for being our guest this week, and good luck in everything that you do.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being on the show, and I'll see you in person very soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Yeah, that's great. Fantastic.